Our guest now is former Congressman Earl Pomeroy, who I invited on the show because I was reading an article recently in Roll Call about the similarities between 2009, 2010, when there was a Tea Party movement across the nation, which I was organizing Tea Party rallies in North Dakota at that time. And sort of what's going on now, where
Thanks a lot, Rob.
yeah, yeah, well, that's right. Yeah, Earl was kind of in our crosshairs back then, but sort of what's happening now, where you're seeing a similar, protest movement shape up. Now, I should note that between the time when I booked Earl on the show and now, we have seen what's happening in Los Angeles, what's happening in Minneapolis, what's happening in some other communities, where you're seeing a concerted protest movement there. But it's interesting, some of your comments, in this article, Earl, you were saying that, essentially the party in power that laughs away or shrugs away overwhelming public response against the program will pay dues in the next election. Now, when you say that, you're talking about personal experience.
Right. Yeah, I paid some dues. Private sector, here we come. You know, I've seen this through different cycles, Rob. I was in for 18 years, and so there were some good times and bad times, and you watch them. And I saw a number of times where the people be mad as hell out there, frankly, and the leadership would say to the nervous members, not to worry, they'll get over it. Or, as has been said with the more recent demonstrations, are the passionate town halls. All these are paid agitators. Well, you can take that view if you want to, but it's what I found is the concern, the anxiety, the anger was very real. Quite frankly, I still believe it was based on misapprehension, a misunderstanding of what we were doing. But on the other hand, it was very real, and ultimately cost me my seat, and cost the Democrats, actually, in 2010, lost 63 seats, worst election since 1938. So you can slough these off if you want to, but there's going to be a election day reckoning, and I think these protests are real, and I think that there's some people going to lose their seats over it.
Earl, it's very interesting. Something that you just, first of all, great to see you, as always. So you just said something very interesting. Thinking back to 2009 in 2010, you and I were on the same side. Rob was on the wrong side during that time. But you said that you're still under the impression that some of the voters didn't understand what was really going on with Obamacare and other things. That's the exact same thing that Julie Fedorchuk is saying right now. She's saying people don't understand the big, beautiful bill. People don't understand. There's no Medicaid cuts in this. Again, I mean, should they you even in a state like North Dakota, we're seeing there's dozens of protests happening on the 14th of June, hundreds and thousands of people coming out. I mean, in a state like North Dakota, you know how hard it is to get people off of their butts to do stuff. So can you elaborate a little bit more, like in 2009, 2010, when did it dawn on you that this was real? Was it election day or was it before that? I mean,
Or see, 1 year out, the insurance companies spent $3.5 million on negative advertising. Now, you don't encounter negative advertising usually outside the campaign window. So you raise some campaign funds, and you've got a war chest ready for the campaign window. Well, here I was getting the bejeepers beat out of me 1 year out, 12 months out. I put $250,000 up against this onslaught from insurance companies, and it was like spitting in the wind, nothing. So people were angry. They had every reason to be angry if the facts were as the insurance companies were telling them. Of course, they weren't. The insurance companies were spending this money to feather their own nest. And we get that. That's how business is done these days. But they were very, very angry. Now, okay, what do we have going on now? You don't have insurance companies advertising against the Congresswoman, but what you do have is people with insurance, with the health care coverage they need. They value this enormously, and they're hearing that it might go away, that it might be reduced. After all, we've got numbers about this big, beautiful bill, $800 billion of cuts in healthcare, specifically in Medicaid. So of course people are going to lose their coverage. We have the present premium structure for the Affordable Care Act, people getting their coverage on the exchanges. Uh, that's going to change quite dramatically. We're going to have the largest premium increases as a result of this bill people have ever seen. And they're going to, and it's estimated now about 5 million of them won't be able to handle it. They'll drop their coverage, but ACA covers 20 million nationally, and most everyone else is going to see a hellacious premium increase. Now, believe me, I was insurance commissioner. There weren't many people in Congress that had that background. And I know that people hate tax increases. The one thing they maybe hate even more is premium increases because it threatens their ability to keep health coverage for their families. Or that these premium increases are going to be daunting. Now, they've structured this so it hits outside the election. People won't pay these premium increases till the next year. But people aren't fools. And they're going to know what's coming at them. They're going to know that the coverage they have now is placed at risk because a bill that passed represents a great reversal in our country in terms of taking coverage away from families.
One of the interesting things about the 2009, 2010 movement was how strange a coalition it was. I mean, I think maybe from the outside looking in, you guys, it's just a bunch of right wingers, but it wasn't. I mean, I was at those rallies. I was speaking at those rallies, and it was bizarre where you would have, kind of a hardcore anarcho-capitalist libertarian on one side of the rally talking about fiat currency and the government, spending and the debt and all that stuff. And on the other side, you'd have a lady who was like, yeah, and these elites are going to take our Medicaid away. I mean, and they're showing up for the same rally. Right. So I mean, it was a strange coalition. Now I don't know that I see that yet in these protests in North Dakota. I mean, I think the Tea Party really got. I mean, the success of the Tea Party was, first of all, that it was a very broad coalition, and then it cracked up because it was such a broad coalition that it couldn't hang together. And I don't see that right now. I mean, a lot of the people I'm seeing organizing these rallies in North Dakota, I mean, they're falling pretty specifically in a category. When I'm looking at the people organizing, the people attending, I don't know that they've reached that critical mass yet. I think you make a good point. And I think your larger point about not listening, I think expands beyond this. When I look at these immigration debates right now, on one hand, I don't like what Donald Trump is doing. I think the man wants blood in the streets, unfortunately. I think he wants this conflict. But on the other hand, Democrats who want to talk about the rule of law in some of these communities, they've been calling themselves sanctuary communities and have been flouting federal immigration law for decades. And I think that's hard for a lot of Americans to take, where I think Democrats are guilty of not listening to Americans on immigration. And I think Republicans in some ways are guilty of not listening to Americans on some of these other things, like maybe, making sure that some of these social safety net programs don't go away. It kind of seems like a crisis of not listening on both sides, or maybe selectively listening.
Not listening on the one hand, but also now tying into a very stratified stream of information that reinforces prior belief, not providing information. And I think that's also a problem. I'm trying to bring focus on the fact that since we passed Medicare and Medicaid, this bill represents the biggest reversal in long-term efforts over the decades to get more families the health coverage they need. And guess what? I would call Trump maybe the great distractor. He's like a magician that has you looking over here while he pulls the rabbit out over here. I listened to the news this morning, anticipating our visit this morning. I didn't hear one word about people losing health care. We're about to have more than 15 million people lose their health coverage. And not a word today, because we're talking about Los Angeles riots, we're talking about the federalization of soldiers. And these are really important issues. I hate the thought. I've been to National Guard deployments. I couldn't be prouder of our soldiers, our patriots who've gone over to Iraq, Afghanistan, put their lives on the line. But boy, I hate to think about people from our own communities being put in a situation where they're forced to arrest their fellow countrymen in support of an ICE raid or something like that. I hate this. So I think we need to be measured. Policing is for cops. It's not for soldiers. And if you're going to move into the soldier realm, you damn well better have a very, very good reason for it. And I don't think that's been established yet. I think that's something we need to take a watch on. So these are important issues. But let's not forget about the fact we're about to take healthcare away from 15 million people, and a number, untold millions more, are going to have much higher premiums. We got to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time, and these are two big issues coming at us right now.
Earl, do you find some bit of irony looking back at 2009 and 2010, the controversy the heat you were taking and ultimately lost your seat was for providing health insurance for people. And now the heat that folks are taking in 2025 is ultimately for taking health insurance away from people. It seems like, you know my opinion on the courageousness of your vote in 2010 and how proud I was that Aaron was working for you at that time. There does seem to be some real interesting contrast between 2010 and 2025 in terms of what we're doing to people's health insurance.
That's a very interesting question. And let me just talk about 2010 first. See, I don't think people were mad at us because we're trying to get more people covered. They were told, if you get more people covered, your family is going to have less. And
Sure.
so the big lie was they're going to pass this Affordable Care Act. It's going to hurt you. It didn't hurt anybody. What it did was get these millions of families coverage that they needed. And so over time, how come people have kind of gotten used to and even grown to like the Affordable Care Act? Because it didn't hurt them, and they like the idea that more people get coverage as long as it doesn't hurt them. Okay, let's move to present time. Now there's going to be coverage stripped away from friends, stripped away from neighbors, maybe stripped away from them. And that is going to hurt. They are going to be mad as hell. I know that because I've dealt with this issue in a public context before. They'll be mad, I think, initially, but the bill's bite really takes place in the years to come. And I would hate to be a candidate running for re-election with a record that, I voted to take your coverage away. That is a losing proposition. Now, they've got to try and round up votes to pass this big, beautiful bill. They passed it by a single vote in the House. A single vote. Our Congresswoman made the difference. Well, but that's okay. It's first go around. We get another shot at this. But the second go around, when this means this becomes law. Well, Chad, I looked at a proposition of, I wasn't there just to be there as long as I could. I was there to do something big. And I felt like expanding health coverage for families was big. It was worth it. It was worth getting thrown out of office for. I was sad people were mad at me, but they got over that when they realized that they'd been told a lie from the insurance companies. Okay, let's move to our Congresswoman or anyone else. They're looking at a proposition: is it worth losing your seat over taking coverage away from families? So you can pay a tax cut that disproportionately represents the wealthiest people in the country. So you give to the rich. You want to lose your seat over that? I wouldn't.
But I think we're missing some context here because not only the 2009 era Tea Parties, we're talking about this. It wasn't just a debate about should we cover or shouldn't we cover. We also spend a lot of time talking about debt and deficits. And that is also a context for this one.
Yeah.
And I think if Julie Fedorchuk was on this call, one of the things she would say is, Earl, how do we address our nation's debt and deficit problem without looking at programs like Medicaid, Medicare? They are enormous portions of the federal budget. So how do we get there without reforming these in some ways? And I say that fully. I am fully on board with the idea that we got to raise some taxes too. But we're not going to solve a budget deficit problem that is routinely measured in over $1 trillion just by raising taxes.
Rob, it'd be nice if this bill actually helped with the debt and didn't cause more of it.
I don't disagree with that. But we've been talking about this only in the context of should we cover or shouldn't we cover? And the thing is, I mean, I'm really, what can we afford to cover? That's what I'm very concerned about.
I always love being on your show because you're such an interesting thinker. And 40 years ago, I was a brand spanking new insurance commissioner. 40 years ago, and I thought healthcare costs are killing us. We got to get after it. How can we deliver healthcare, quality care, more cost effectively? Guess what? 40 years have passed. We haven't made any progress that I can see on that question, which is why the bill keeps getting higher and higher. But and we have to continue to work on that, and we need to do a better job than we have done. I think both parties are talking about some interesting things on pharmaceutical costs, for example, that reflect an effort in that area. But you mentioned something very important. There is the spending side of this bill. There's the revenue side of the bill, and they cut taxes. We're looking at this mountain of debt coming at us, and they cut taxes 3.6 on net, $3.6 trillion. And then they say we have to take away your health care because we can't afford it. Well, how about that tax cut? It doesn't have to be 3.6 trillion. Most of it goes to
When we interviewed Congresswoman Fedorchuk, she said it's no new tax cuts, it's a continuation of the existing policy.
Yeah. Well, what is that? Okay, so they can continue the existing policy on tax cuts. They can't continue the existing policy on making sure people can afford their health insurance premiums
Yeah.
because it's the same deal. We have expiring laws. They say, oh no, the revenue side doesn't really count. Only the part where we're helping people afford their premiums. We can't afford that anymore. And what I say is, if you're going to balance these, at least look at the tax cuts going to the wealthiest people. They're fine. We don't have to worry about them. We should worry more about families that can't afford health insurance because it's not just about the families. What about the doctors and community hospitals when they're not getting paid? And in North Dakota, it's estimated that there's going to be 17,000 people losing their coverage. We're going to lose rural hospitals over it. It is my sincere belief. You just can't take that much. People, when they don't have coverage, they still get care. They just can't pay for it. And that ultimately threatens the healthcare system that we all depend on, even those of us with perfectly good coverage.
I just, in respect, I just get frustrated when it seems like each side only wants to talk about one specific.
That's fair. That's
When it's a larger problem, and I'm not sparing any criticism for Republicans. The big beautiful bill adds to the debt and deficit problem. We're not fixing anything. We're saying, oh, we're justifying these cuts because we have a debt and deficit problem, and yet the overall bill adds to that problem. Well, what are we doing? And meanwhile, the president's throwing himself a military parade for his birthday that's going to cost over many millions of dollars. The deployments of active duty military to California has a cost. I mean, what are we doing? But that's what frustrates me is I am sympathetic to what you're saying, but I also care about the debt and the deficit. And I feel like an honest broker, and not saying that you aren't being an honest broker, but I feel like if we want to be honest about this, we have to talk about both of these things. I don't think we can afford to continue providing the level of federal services that we have been. Cuts got to happen. On the other hand, we also have to price government appropriately and raise taxes in some ways to pay for it. But everybody wants to live in a fantasy land where we can provide all these government services and it doesn't really matter and we just pay for it by. It frustrates me. I don't.
me too, Bob. Me too. As a freshman, I got on the budget committee. It was 1993. We put a budget plan together that did raise revenues. Got in a heck of a lot of trouble for it. Actually, Newt Gingrich became speaker in no small part because of the way we built this bill.
Well, you've been a part of a couple of Republican resolutions,
I
haven't
voted for it, passed by a single vote, and it had a very tough reelect, quite frankly. But here's what happened: when the Republicans had control, spending stopped. They wanted to cut taxes. We still had Clinton in the White House. So each party kind of checked the other. You're not going to savage revenues because you're going to get vetoed. You're not going to go crazy on spending because you don't have the House. And each party held each other in check. And guess what? By the end of the decade, we had balanced the budget. We hadn't eliminated the debt, but we were in a balanced budget. Now, we'll never see that again, I don't think, given how wildly out of balance it is now.
Do you think and it's not, I mean, ideologically, if you look at the balance of power in Congress, It's not that out of whack. I think the problem is, maybe you agree with me or disagree with me. I have a feeling you're going to agree with me because you're a legislative branch guy. I think the problem is Congress is dysfunctional. It doesn't do anything. And so a lot of the budget decisions are just being made in the White House, where the presidents are kind of in this power vacuum, are just kind of doing whatever they want.
Yeah, I think that's right. I've been very disappointed with the absence of independent thinking you're seeing across the ranks of Congress, Republican and Democrat. And let me just rail on the Democrats for a little. My gosh, they were just lockstep with a very left Biden, and Biden wasn't left, but his people were. They pulled him over to the left, uh, and I just thank goodness for Joe Manchin, who helped to basically rein in some of the proposals that might have passed last time. Our deficit situation would be worse than it is. Okay, that was the Democrats. The Republicans, my heavens, they are really like a lockstep, in my opinion. It's not healthy. You got to have a one thing about you can say about our overweighted one party legislature. These Republicans get in there and they fight like hell. You don't see that in Washington. They line up like good little soldiers. Yes, sir. Mate, no, sir. And whatever it is, Mr. Trump. And you know, I think that you need to have in the legislative branch vigorous debate, different viewpoints represented. We're a big, diverse country. You can't tell me uh, Nevada and New Hampshire send people to Washington, they all vote just alike. There's very big differences that need to be resolved. And if legislators give up that responsibility and say, I want to be the best soldier I can be for my leader, well, then you're really letting your voters down. And we're seeing a lot of that right now.
Earl, in fear of falling for the distractor in chief, there's an article up on KFYR TV today talking about Trump and FEMA, and he basically saying we need to phase out FEMA. It should be the state's responsibility, and if governors can't figure out how to deal with hurricanes or floods or whatever, they shouldn't be governor. What would North Dakota be like right now if we didn't have FEMA in Grand Forks and FEMA in Minot and FEMA during all these disasters?
During the years that I've been in, you're probably talking at us from Bismarck today, Chad.
Yep.
I remember the FEMA response in Bismarck. I remember the FEMA response in Minot, and actually more than once, Rob. And Grand Forks, of course, that's the poster child of how FEMA literally rebuilt the city. And now we have a fine, prosperous Grand Forks. It was on its back after that total inundation flood of 1997. We didn't have the capacity to handle this. I'll tell you that. I think that Governor Schaefer, my good partner during those years of Reconstruction, would say we couldn't have done this without FEMA. There's no way we could have done it without FEMA. It strikes me as very odd. You know what? I think an indication of how this isn't going to go well over the years was in Sarah Huckabee, who now governor, what is she, governor of Arkansas?
Yep.
And she was a former president's press secretary, begging for federal money, and he said no. The fact is, these disasters overrun a state's ability to handle it. And what's more, we're the United States of America, and we're Americans. We stand together on stuff. If the next state over, people get absolutely whacked, well, then they're our countrymen. We want to respond to that. It's only fair. And believe me, our time is coming because these disasters, they'll get you sooner or later.
Earl, one other quick thing on the big beautiful bill. There's also substantial SNAP cuts in that bill, and the expectation is that the states will just pay for that. As somebody who pays very close attention to the North Dakota legislature and knows we're basically paying nothing in income taxes and our property taxes are going way down, I'm really fearful that we're going to end up with a lot of hungry people because states aren't going to pick up the tab. Is that something you've been paying attention to? Are you concerned about that?
And should do. Let me go back on a gripe, and this is a Democrats thing. This is food stamps. They called it SNAP, but now it's got a new name, SNAP. I think that was woke put into language. So we talk about SNAP, no one knows what the hell they're talking about. This is food stamps. This is people getting the food they need to feed their kids, or elderly people trying to make it on just tiny fixed incomes. You don't want to cut into nutrition to pay for tax cuts. What are you thinking? There's some basic elements of what we can do for one another as Americans. I like to say with this concept is it's not socialism, Rob. I mean, all of us protect each of us, and there's a day when people need some help, and that day when it comes to food, that's an especially basic need. Shame on them for even thinking about cutting food stamps, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think I think a lot of people get glib sometimes with social pejoratives like that, calling something Marxist or socialist or whatever. And I think, I'm probably as guilty of that as anybody. I think plenty of people are probably guilty of similar things. I don't think that social safety net programs that try to stop people from starving to death in the street is socialism. I think it's just something we can do as one of the most prosperous societies in the history of humanity. We can do these things, and they can be cost effective. And yeah, and some of these things, it's really, I think one of the great, most confounding things about the Trump era is watching this supposedly populist movement arise, organize itself behind a born on third base billionaire real estate tycoon. And then also like even things like with the FEMA thing, there's a reason. I mean, maybe the state of New York or Texas or California has the resources to organize a disaster response on their own. North Dakota doesn't have the tax base for that sort of thing. Arkansas doesn't have the tax base for that sort of thing because we're relatively small, rural states. We're very spread out because our big industry is farming. So we have a lot of wide open spaces. And that means we don't have the tax base necessarily to respond to those sorts of things. It's appropriate for the federal government to have those resources available. Now, if you want to argue that FEMA could be reformed, it could be made more efficient, sure, I agree. Let's have that debate. The idea we're just not going to have FEMA. And it's weird because the people from rural America who would be hurt most by FEMA not existing are the people who are lining up for this administration. I don't.
What you got me on? Kristi Noem, now head of Homeland Security, former governor of South Dakota. Well, she knows disasters. We're up in this exposed Great Plains area, and we get hit with disasters. We've gotten them worse, but I remember when almost 200 people died in a flood in Rapid City. I mean, South Dakota's had their time in the barrel. We all have our time in the barrel. And for her to say, well, that can't happen anymore because I'm with the Trump train, I really dislike that. To me, she's kind of abandoning the education that she would have had as governor of South Dakota and going all in with a proposal that doesn't work that well, even in big states. You look at the hell, Los Angeles almost burned down, not entirely, but they lost portions of Los Angeles that we never thought would burn. My opinion, that would, if California alone is supposed to take care of that, going to hurt the schools, going to hurt other things. States don't have budgets that anticipate this kind of devastating hit. We didn't with Grand Forks, and other states don't when they get hit.
Yeah. Well, and my point is, again, I want to help California too. I want to help Texas too. I mean, really, in some ways, if you're going to complain about coastal elites, I mean, they're the ones with the tax bases that if anybody has a shot at responding to those things, they do. Fargo doesn't. Grand Forks doesn't. Minot doesn't. Right. All right. Anyway, Earl, it's always a delight to talk with you. Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
I enjoy the invitation. You keep those invites coming. I'll be back.
Will do.
Thanks, Earl.